morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I don't know when you're watching this, but whatever time it is Monster Mash time. We are about to talk about Godzilla versus Kong. This is a spoiler-free review, ladies and gentlemen. That said, if you're just particularly sensitive about hearing any aspect of a film before you see it, you might want to see it first and then come back and chat with us a little bit about it. And there will be some spoiler-filled chats next week on SJU, so stay tuned for that. But for now, Eric Goldman is here with me, Roth Cornet, to unpack this Clash of the Titans, but not the remake of the film.
No.
Classic.
Though it is a remake in a way of King Kong versus Godzilla from 1962, I believe it was. So this is the second cinematic clash. This is the first time we've had a reboot of a versus movie, technically speaking.
Yeah, well, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about it. First of all, how big a fan are you of these characters? Did you go in, they're sort of really advocating this idea of Team Kong versus Team Godzilla, like that you're coming in on the side of one of the monsters. Were you coming in on the side of one of the monsters?
I mean, maybe a little bit Kong. So I grew up watching these movies on like afternoon TV. Like I remember the Godzilla movies were always playing on like Sunday afternoons here in LA growing up, and I watched them and I enjoyed them, but I wasn't like hardcore into them. I didn't like follow them all. I couldn't tell you the intricacies of them all, but I like them. They're fun. These Monsterverse movies, this is the fourth movie in a franchise, which is a strange thing because I don't think it's ever really gelled as a franchise. They've kind of been disappointing overall to me. I liked Kong Skull Island quite a bit, but the two Godzilla movies I was disappointed by, and King of the Monsters I was really disappointed by because Michael Dougherty, who made Trick or Treat one of my favorite movies the past like 15 years. This time I was again excited with Adam Wingard making it because I love The Guest, I love You're Next. And this time I was very happy with the outcome. This time I felt like I got what I wanted out of a movie called Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, it's interesting because he has a very specific, for his other films, I feel like he has a fairly specific style. And I was curious to see how it would translate to this large scale, but this really felt like its own film, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily feel his presence as a filmmaker, and that's not a bad thing because this is a really fun movie and I think appropriate for what it is. It is, listen, we both saw it at the drive-in. I'm so glad we did. I will say, one of the things that I am a little saddened by right now is that this is 100% built to be a spectacle film. Like, this isn't meant to, you know, we're not here to parse the layers, right? We're like, was the monster fight fun? Was the world building fun? There is some, I will say, not sort of to undersell it, there is some character work there and a little bit of development. But if you start to scratch the surface, you're going to find quite a lot of befuddling parenting choices first and foremost in this movie, just across the board. You're just really going to question people's choices as parents. But as far as delivering on the monster, oh my God, amazing shot. As far as that was such love it. As far as delivering on the monsters themselves, incredible. And in terms of the pathos of the protagonist, who is Kong, that is there as well. Like, you really feel for him, you really relate to him, and he has a particular relationship, which is very much there in the trailers with this little girl, that really helps to create a sense of empathy and connection to Kong as a character, and is way less creepy than the pseudo in love version that we've seen in the previous iterations. It's much more. He's the best parent in the movie, in my opinion.
He is. I do think that that's the most, this thing makes you love Kong. Like, he is, from the opening moments, I won't say how you kind of meet him, but you're like, oh, it's just a big cuddly Kong. He is, Adam Wingard has talked about the fact that he, there's only been one Kong Monsterverse movie versus two Godzilla movies. So he decided, like, he would make him kind of the protagonist, the hero, certainly, of these creatures of this film. And I think they really, really do a great job of investing you in him, whether you liked him before or you didn't. I think people will come out of this movie really liking Kong. That relationship he has with the little girl is very sweet. Maybe the best relationship in the film is their connection.
It really is. And listen, the truth is, like, these movies aren't necessarily, I mean, I will say that the original Godzilla movie is a very complicated movie. And that one, that really is addressing larger issues. And certainly the franchise has done that from time to time. This particular movie is like about the monsters, and so it's good that the character that we feel the most connection to is one of the monsters, right?
Yes.
That said, for Godzilla fans, if you're team Godzilla, Godzilla's always been a very complicated anti-hero. Like he, goes back and forth between being a hero and a quasi villain,
Mhm.
so I do think Godzilla very much gets his due as well in this movie. It's Kong's movie,
Yeah.
but Godzilla gets his due. He's not, I won't say more than that. Godzilla gets his due, and has some really great moments. There's some awesome spectacle and fighting. I think if you loved, Pacific Rim, but wish you could have seen it a little better, you will
Mhm.
be pleased with this movie.
Yeah, it almost actually made me feel like this is what for Godzilla, this is kind of what I wish the 2014, the first Monsterverse movie had been, because that one kind of frustratingly kept him off screen so much. And every time it felt like, oh, here's a big Godzilla attack's about to happen, they'd cut away. This time, yes, he is off screen a lot more than Kong. He is a looming menace who shows up now and again. But when he shows up, don't worry, you see everything he's doing. You get an idea of what he is capable of, and just how kick-ass he can be. So I feel like, yeah, they use him very well, even if some people might be frustrated if they're like, they want just more Godzilla, especially because the screen time of Kong is higher. But I think that what you get of Godzilla is very impressive in this film.
Agreed. And there's two other things that I think are done well, which is that they integrate some of the things that have happened in the other films and some of the stuff from the Godzilla lore in a really smart way. That I don't think detracts, but actually culminates in a great final sequence, right?
Yeah.
I love that. And then the other thing is there's an awesome world building element to this, like
Hmm.
really neat stuff that you get to see, which I won't get into here, but it was probably my favorite aspect of the film, though defied any, like, again, don't scratch the surface and think about the physics, like, just do not.
Yeah.
Go with it. And it's just a really great action, adventure, monster spectacle. It's sort of all of those things in one that really sweeps you into this world. And I want folks to see it on the big screen, which is the bummer right now, right? Because
Right.
like you're not necessarily going to be able to.
Yeah, if you can safely see it on a
Yeah.
big screen, that'd be great. But yes,
I mean, they
obviously,
they gave us a popcorn this big because they know what this movie is. It's
right.
a tub of popcorn movie.
Yes, it definitely is, but it really delivers on that level. And when they are fighting, I saw it at the drive-in by myself. My wife ended up deciding she couldn't go, so I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm like, yeah, like I was definitely like, no one could hear me, but I'm in my car. I was having a great time with it. My big complaint about this movie, and I'm not a down the line like, what are these people? What are the humans doing in this movie? I just want monsters. I think no, the humans serve a purpose, and there's some stuff I like with the humans, and like we said, the little girl is a big favorite part of it. What did you think, Roth? I felt like they never really figured out how to integrate the Millie Bobby Brown, Brian Tyree Henry, Julian Dennison plot line with everything else. I like all those actors. Obviously, Millie Bobby Brown is a big connective tissue to the last Godzilla movie, but it felt like a lot of scenes of the three of them that felt like they were didn't necessarily need to be there narratively. Like there was a cleaner way to kind of get to what they needed to do. That I felt like, well, we have to use Millie Bobby Brown. Like we have to have her in this movie a lot. What'd you think, Roth?
It's funny because you had seen it before me and we
Yeah.
talked a little bit ahead and you mentioned that. And so maybe I was primed to look for it, but it
Hmm.
actually didn't bother me at all. I really liked their banter. Again, it's like popcorn movie stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
and the purpose that they were taking us to down this particular path that was going to ultimately play out in
Yes.
that final sequence. And so I did think that we needed some kind of connective tissue to not just like eh, cut away. Meanwhile, over here with characters that we don't know and don't care about, they built it in as trying to figure out uh, Godzilla's motivation, which I think is the thing that tells us, it helps the character arc for both Kong and Godzilla at the end that they wanted to unpack why Godzilla was doing what it was doing.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, like at the end of the day, reveal the true villain of the piece, which is humanity.
Yeah, where they get, where they get is ultimately certainly important to the movie. Yeah, I just felt like maybe a couple less scenes. It's interesting to note that there were a couple actors that were supposed to be in this movie, Zhang Zi, returning from the previous film, and Jessica Henwick, who are not, and I think were left on the cutting room floor. And I want to stress, I am not saying release the Wingard cut, because I think Wingard himself said, I think this movie should be a tight, like under 2 hour thing. And I cut things for a reason, because sometimes you just feel like, yeah, this needs to be streamlined. So to me, watching those scenes with those characters, I like maybe you can cut a couple of them, make it a little tighter. Like Kyle Chandler, I bet he's not in this movie very much. He's back, but not much. So maybe that was one of the other things that got cut. But I think at the end of the day, what they decided to do, what they decided to focus on for the most part was very smart here. They knew their audience. Like you said, Roth, it's like, it doesn't quite feel like tonally his other movies, but I also feel like it does show the same sort of, I get why you enjoy this type of movie vibe that I got when I watched something like You're Next or The Guest. Like I'm into this genre too. So I'm going to kind of like, play to that. And I think that what you get here with a classic monster mashup movie really delivers on that score.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad to hear that he understood that sometimes a movie just needs to move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't really the kind of movie that we need to labor over much. In fact, again, like, I just want to highlight, don't scratch surface too deeply, because things start to really not make a lot of sense very quickly in terms of the human choices. Yeah, but that's a little bit for the spoiler talk. But ultimately, really fun movie, beautifully visually, great world building. As I said, again, that's my favorite part.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to serve the protagonist and make us care about the protagonist, done and done. We care a lot about Kong, but again, I would disagree and think that Godzilla does get his due. But it is Kong's movie, and it's a good one. It's highly entertaining, great monster fights. I mean, popcorn movie. It's a fun summer, well, spring now, popcorn movie, and I hope folks get to enjoy it that way. I loved seeing it at the drive-in too, because it was so weird. I
Yes.
haven't been to a drive-in since I was very young, and so I was like, this was kind of the perfect movie to see at a drive-in.
No, it does play great like that. And yeah, again, as someone who felt like the entire Monsterverse thing hadn't really worked, and that last Kong movie didn't do very well, and it was one of those things where if they already filmed Godzilla versus Kong when that came out. If they hadn't, who knows? Maybe they wouldn't have done it. But as we're recording, this movie's already opened overseas, but it hasn't opened here in the U.S. and it's doing really well overseas. And so it feels like this might revitalize this whole Monsterverse idea. And I feel like if this kind of helps them figure out if we're going to do more of these, here's the right vibe, here's the right tone, that's great, because I want these movies to succeed and be movies I'm into. I just hadn't really before now. And I think a lot of people are going to go see this movie who haven't followed all the other three. And I know I have friends who didn't quite understand that this was a franchise of 4 movies. That's okay. You can go in clean and I think just have a really good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a few things might be slightly befuddling.
A little bit.
Today, it's fine. You'll take the ride.
They're
so
fighting 2 big monsters.
Two big monsters. They have beef. It's okay. So I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys do too. When you see it, please do come back here and let us know what you thought. And we will be, again, talking about some spoiler aspects of the film next week on SJU. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.